Ladies and gentlemen, honestly, I really don't have anything to say to you all. Nothing motivational, nothing inspirational, and definitely nothing life-changing. I really don't have a point that I'm trying to make here. That being said, I'm going to start doing something a little bit differently, and you can probably already guess what that is. I'm going to start talking a little bit faster. I'm going to lean into the words that I'm saying, and I'm going to use it to make myself sound so much more engaging and so much more convincing. I'm not going to take any large pause, and that's going to make me seem really, really passionate. Remember, I've not given you anything of something just yet. I'm not building up to anything, nor is there a grand point that I'm trying to make. But by virtue of my pace, you're all still paying attention. And all of a sudden, I'm going to slow down. The rapid shift in pace from fast to slow makes it seem like I gave you something so remarkable, so insightful, and so valuable to ponder upon, and now I'm dramatically letting you reflect on it. But again, I've said nothing of substance thus far. So what did I just do here? I used pace as a way to engage with you and compel you to pay attention even when I didn't have anything to say to you all. And that is one of the many tools of charismatic storytellers. Charismatic storytelling is a phenomenon that occurs when some person, by virtue of certain qualities, intrigues you and leverages that intrigue to sell you a story with the ultimate goal of making you care. And what does caring really translate to in practicality? It might be as simple as nodding during a speech, accepting your LinkedIn follow request, or potentially even joining an organization, and so much more. So let's talk about charismatic storytelling. Now, everyone has a favorite story, a genre that intrigues them, a character they're obsessed with, or perhaps even a trope that they desperately want to relive. Sometimes, though, what makes these stories appealing and intriguing to us isn't really the plot or the character, but rather the storyteller. The storyteller has the capacity to turn bits and pieces of a tale into something much more memorable. Just imagine how much more fun your first-year economics class would be if Kevin Hart narrated the textbook. However, stories exist outside of books and novels. In essence, a storyteller is just someone that relays a set of ideas, relationships, and themes through a narrative in order to evoke something. And if that's what storytelling is, then it has a place outside of libraries and literature. Storytelling has a place in any space where people need to be encouraged to do something, motivated to be something, or inspired to feel something. You may not believe it, but you too are a storyteller, because stories live within us. Any journey we pursue, any challenge we experience, any doubt or conviction we have is a story. If it has the capacity to open up someone's eyes to a different reality, to your journey and your experiences, then it's a story. The last time you were telling your friend about a guy whose text you were smiling at, the networking session where you were just trying to small talk your way through, or perhaps even the tutorial where you were just trying to get participation points, you were telling a story, be that of your love life, unemployment, or just life as a University of Toronto student. Across a diverse range of social settings, stories and storytellers thrive in getting people inspired, talking, paying attention, and so much more. So whether it's comfort, entertainment, education, or inspiration, a good storyteller mobilizes you in some capacity and gets you to care. So what makes a good storyteller? What makes a storyteller be as good as Jamie Foxx? Well, to be a good storyteller, you need to have charisma. Research has shown time and time again that the undeniable capacity of charisma to mobilize people and influence people in a variety of positive ways. Literature from the Academy of Management Journal finds that charismatic leaders create followers that identify with them and create a sense of mutual identity. In doing so, they instill a sense of optimism, the interpretation of stress as a growth opportunity, self-efficacy, motivation, and attentiveness to goals. In other words, charisma is able to make people associate positive feelings with something that they may consider at first to be challenging. In other words, charisma is defined by someone's ability to get other people to care for, value, respect, and assign meaning to something because a person associated with it is charismatic. I'm a private tutor for high school students, and I typically teach math. And in our first lessons, every single student of mine has shared the same sentiment and said the exact same 6 words. Soban, I will never like math. And that's fair enough. Pythagoras is definitely no Chris Hemsworth. But I was always up to the challenge. That being said, I learned quite early on that if I was to build these individuals into better students, my first goal wasn't to make them fall in love with math, it was to make them love me. In their eyes, I represent math, but I didn't used to. It was their teachers that did. And that's precisely why they came to despise math in the first place, because every single time they thought about math, they would think about those teachers that had been unkind, uncompassionate, and frankly, unlikable. And now when they think of math, they will think of every lesson, every problem, every question that they have shared with me. My job then is to be charismatic enough to allow their appeal of me find its way into some open-mindedness about math. And through charismatic storytelling, I was successful. Before every single lesson, I would integrate storytelling into my teaching. I would tell them about the beauty of the golden ratio, the intense debate between whether Fermat's last theorem or the Fibonacci sequence was my favorite. I would even tell them about the development of calculus. Now, in the short term, all it really got me were a couple of eye rolls and a very flattering nickname, nerd. In the long run, though, what it got me were several students whose minds had been open to a different side of math. Every single student of mine has expressed in some capacity, in some form, at some point, that they've come to appreciate math just a little bit more. And the stories of math and my own experiences are precisely what got me there. Storytelling turned something that they once despised into something they were so much more comfortable with. Now, did I make them want to pursue a PhD of mathematics? No. Did I make them want to frame the quadratic formula and look at it before they go to sleep every night? No. But charismatic storytelling did make them care for and develop a positive relationship with something that they once thought was their sworn enemy. That's the power of charisma. Now, how precisely do charismatic storytellers use stories? Well, the first step is really obvious. They tell you a story. They tell you about their life, their interests, their triumphs, their successes. They connect their stories to larger lessons on living and believing. They tell you about all their failures and how it's built into their success. And beyond their own story, they develop a dialogue of passion, inspiration, and motivation. Second, they make you relate to that story. And this is really important. Charismatic storytellers will draw parallels between you and them. They will say things like, I was in your shoes once, or you know what I mean, or we've all been there. And this convinces you to engage with their story even more because the circumstances of that story are the same circumstances in your own life. They may even take it take another step further and say, and draw parallels between their path to success and your current life. They'll say things like, you should do X, Y, Z, or here is my advice, or here is how I solve the same problems you have. And because of these parallels, you feel convinced that that story has the antidote of your adversity. And ultimately, you dive deep into the story, buy it, and use it to lead your own life because something in that story and something in that storyteller has convinced you that it has exactly what you have needed. And the only reason you do this is because the storyteller is charismatic. There's a world of a difference between Robert Downey Jr. telling me about perseverance versus a TA that gets paid minimum wage. Now, before I break down what specifically charisma is, let's talk about what charisma isn't, because there's a lot of misconceptions about it. 2 months ago, I was scrolling on Instagram Reels at 2 a.m., as one does, and I came upon a reel that wasn't really talking about charisma. What the message was about the same. It was essentially a micro thirst trap of Henry Cavill in a tuxedo, walking in slow motion with a black and white filter. And the caption was brilliant. The caption was, how to get people to crave being around you. And they gave some really meaningful, important steps. They told me to tease people with my charm, to be mysterious, and to own my swagger. Whatever that means. Of course, none of this is meaningful and provides no useful insight on what charisma is. Charisma is also not equivalent to extroversion. Just because you're charismatic does not mean necessarily that you're outgoing. Something tells me that Mother Teresa was not out clubbing every Saturday night. Charisma is also not equivalent to universal popularity. Just because you're charismatic, it doesn't mean that everyone likes you. Michelle Obama has a whole host of people that dislike her. They're called Republicans. In actuality, charismatic people have three key qualities: comfortability, competence, and security. And they find a fine balance between the three. Comfortability means that they feel safe, secure, and at ease around them. You don't feel stressed, you don't feel anxious, even if there's a power dynamic involved. You feel valued and you feel important, and even when you're at your worst, they can praise you and at the same time build you to be your best. You can come to them with your problems because you know that their response to it will be warm and enriching to your self-esteem. Charismatic people make you feel comfortable. Competence means they're great at what they do. They're intelligent, vocal, and bold individuals who have mastered the art of their craft. They're convincing because they know what they're doing, and they're trustworthy because their work speaks for themselves. You can come to them with your problems not only because you know it's safe to do so, but because you know you will learn something new, and their response to it will be conducive to your self-development. Charismatic people are competent people. Security is the intersection between these two qualities. Security is what allows them to build you up and make you feel comfortable, and is a direct reflection of their competence. Charismatic people are incredibly secure in their skills, their abilities, and their talents. They know that they're the best at what they do, and nobody can take that away from them. And that makes them really confident. And for secure people, there's a big fine line between the two. Overconfidence is I am better than you. Confidence is you're not better than me. And this further enhances their ability to build you up because they believe with conviction that your success doesn't pose a threat to their own. Charismatic people are secure people. To drive home the relationship between charisma and storytelling, let's use The Rock as an example. The Rock is one of the world's richest, most popular, and most loved celebrities. Science of People has termed him the most charismatic man alive. In the case of celebrities, and particularly actors, we seem to attribute charisma exclusively to the competence dimension. But that's not necessarily the case with The Rock. The Rock really isn't that good of an actor. 4 different clips of 4 different movies will show him wearing the same sage and beige safari costume, and you probably couldn't even tell there were 4 different movies. That being said, The Rock is incredibly charismatic, and he sells a really good story. His story is about hard work, about masculinity, about determination. His incredibly complex story can be summarized into 11 powerful words. It's about drive. It's about power. We stay hungry. We devour. His story is incredibly relatable. He talks about experiencing setbacks and challenges as a child. He talks about his involvement with crime in high school and how he overcame it. He even talks about his issues with mental health, with him stating in an interview, "As men, we didn't really talk about it. We just kept our heads down and worked through it." His vulnerability reinforces his sense of security and makes us much more likely to engage with him and stay connected with him, even if he's going to star in another Fast and Furious movie. Now you may say to me, "Come on, Soban, of course The Rock is charismatic. He's in these high-budget Hollywood movies. Of course he's charismatic. He walks the red carpet. Of course he's charismatic. He's in Hollywood." And there is some truth to that. Title, roles, and statuses do have somewhat of a correlation with charisma, but it's not necessarily a straightforward causal determinant. And I'll give you an example. One of the positions that I am very, very greatly honored to hold is that I am the president of one of the colleges here at the University of Toronto. A couple of months ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and they told me, "Soban, you know what? In my 4th year, I also want to be president." And to this, I was slightly intrigued, because they never came out to me or stood out to me as someone who was so passionate about student government. And so I inquired further, "Why do you want to be the president?" And they recounted an instance that happened several weeks ago. There was a large-scale event that was planned, and I was scheduled to speak at it, and I arrived a little bit late. But the person who was speaking at the time of my arrival saw me from afar and called me into the venue. And when I walked in, everyone started clapping and cheering for me. And my friend said, "I want that." And I told my friend the reason the crowd clapped wasn't because the president had walked in. They had clapped because I had walked in. In my 3.5 years at the University of Toronto, I had spent my time building myself up, engaging in various leadership activities, and interacting with a variety of people. In my 3.5 years at the University of Toronto, I had spent my time ensuring that people believed I was competent, that people believed I was secure, and that people felt comfortable around me. In my 3.5 years at the University of Toronto, I had developed a story that people paid attention to. That applause was a reflection of my charismatic persona and storytelling, not of my title. So what does that tell us? That the charismatic storyteller won't always be the person in the suit. It won't always be the person underneath the spotlight. It won't always be the person with the microphone, which is very coincidental right now. But it might be the person at the dinner table who's making people laugh. It might be the person at coat check who's making people feel comfortable as they walk into a networking event. So sure, titles and roles and statuses may be really important, but true charisma begins where there is a genuine effort to build lasting connections with those around you. And there's absolutely no title that can replicate that. So where does all of this bring us to? The fact of the matter that charismatic storytelling is an incomparable tool that brings people together. None of this is about management. None of this is about business. None of this is even about leadership. It's about people. People are affected by charisma. People are affected by storytelling. And it's the relationship between the two that gets people mobilized, gets people to care about something, gets people to embody positive characteristics, and gets people to believe in something. In our current world, your success is defined by how people see you and your interaction with them. And if you can convince people you're competent, make them believe you're secure, and make them feel comfortable around you, they will not only buy your story, but be empowered through it. The end.